What is up, gamers? This is Griever here, bringing you guys another video game review, and the game I'm talking to you guys today about is none other than one of the best games of last year, and that, of course, is none other than Insomniac's Spider-Man. Now, this game was phenomenal. It did so many things right, and it just proved once again that you do not need to change up the core of what you're trying to sell us. We love already that the establishment, the fan base is there for this type of title. All you need to do is just do it. Go and look back at what people liked and didn't like about previous things, what they want to see in a next type of game, and then just do it. And they proved they can do such a thing with Insomniac Spider-Man, because this game is phenomenal. It is a wonderful addition without trying to insist upon itself too far. And it's just a wonderful, if you are new, which would be insane, but if you are new to Spider-Man and the lore and the villains and the story, I won't say that this is a perfect introduction into the Spider-Man world, the Spider-Verse, but assuming that you've been living under a rock and you haven't seen a single Spider-Man film either before or now after the Marvel Cinematic Universe has taken off, or you never grew up in the 90s and watched the animated cartoon, or you never picked up a comic book or played one of the many other Spider-Man video games, assuming all of this, this game is still not a bad introduction into the Spider-Man lore and verse. It's just going to show and assume that you have some basic understanding of the lore surrounding the world, I would say. Now, me being a longtime fan, I can honestly say that so many little tidbits I know that some people probably didn't pick up, but that doesn't really matter for the overall gameplay, nor does it matter for the plot. And I really, really enjoy this game. So, without further ado, let's just get underway. We're going to do the same type of style. Now, I know my Darksiders 3 review was a little long, and I spent way too much time talking about different problems. I probably should have made that 2 videos. And in that instance, this is also going to be a 2-part video in a certain sense. There's something about the different suit and costume unlockables that I want to talk about in a separate video rather than make this review drag on too long. So stay tuned for that video as well. That will be released sometime in the near future. And for right now, though, we're just going to stick to the same format of the Darksiders 3 review, being plot and story first, spoilers ahead, followed by gameplay, soundtrack, pros and cons, and a final, just what I thought about it, a final word before we close off the video. So, with that being said, let's just start with Spider-Man. Now, right off the bat, I said that I was a big Spider-Man fan at the beginning of this video, and that still rings true. However, I have not kept up to date with Spider-Man since probably around junior high school, which would have been the early 2000s. So a lot of the things here may or may not have been lost on me. Let's just get that out of the way right now, because the plot and story has some new elements that I'm not too familiar with, as far as it being a Spider-Man fan who owns plenty of comic book. I watched the animated TV series, I've watched every Spider-Man film, etc., etc. So, with that in mind, this story takes place in a very different period of Peter Parker's life. And it's wonderfully refreshing, in the sense that though it takes a far different direction, and albeit I still prefer the direction that the animated series took, this story takes place in a way that I appreciate far more than what every other movie and every other thing has tried to do, even though I might like some of the different movie directions and some of the different gaming directions. I am sick and tired of seeing junior high school Peter Parker. I'm tired of seeing that. The animated series had it perfect. Show me a guy, a college student Peter Parker, a confident Peter Parker who has been Spider-Man for a while, fought a couple supervillains. He's in his early to mid 20s. He's a well-rounded superhero by this point. He's not some greenhorn making mistakes. That story has been beaten to death with a 10-foot pole ever since I was a kid. And I'm so happy that this game spends no time doing that. Spider-Man has, according to the very beginning of the game, we have the Kingpin saying they've been doing this for 8 years. And Spider-Man being around, a rough teenager by the time, puts him roughly between the ages of 21 and 25 in this timeline, which is a perfect, because once again, the animated series was a perfect rendition for Spider-Man. And this game falls on the same thing. And I love it, because the plot and story is fine. Some of it, of course, is changed up a bit. For example, a lot of things have clearly happened. They, once again, go on the assumption that you have bought this game with some sensibility about Spider-Man, some knowledge, previous knowledge about Spider-Man and Mary Jane and Aunt May and all that such. Because this game, it showcases things that you wouldn't otherwise get. The introduction, once again, spoilers. Spoiler heavy, guys. The introduction of Black Cat already being someone that they already had their story. The Black Cat being introduced, Felicia Hardy, all that stuff. A cat burglar, sort of idea in the same vein as Catwoman from the Batman series. And the whole idea of them having a relationship, maybe sort of straining Mary Jane and Peter Parker's relationship as, of course, Black Cat affectionately always calling Spider-Man Spider, very affectionate and flirtatious with Spider-Man always. That stays true to this game. And though we don't see Black Cat in the main series game, we do get the fact and just the dialogue speaking that they have already had their little cat fights, shall we say, their little back and forths. And that's good. That's established world building. Things have happened that we might not see. Things off screen and in the past have happened that we won't get hammered home in 1,000 cutscenes to showcase us exactly what has happened. And that is a wonderful way that you feel like this world is alive, that things did happen, things will happen, and things are currently happening, all in the span of this game. And it's wonderful. And I'm using the Black Cat example to start off right from the bat because there's a perfect example of a fan favorite character who is a main staple in the Spider-Man verse who doesn't actually really show up in the game. But you know there's history there. You know things have happened. The same introduction with the fact that the Kingpin's remarks about this being going on for 8 years. The fact that we see all the newspaper clippings at the beginning of the game showcasing that Spider-Man has already fought his fair share of his rogues gallery. And that they have built a super prison similar to, once again, the animated series. There are super cells or super prisons built to house these supernatural, superpowered villains. Wonderful, wonderful way, and it doesn't feel like you can't jump into this game without knowing all these people. You get enough of an introduction. You don't need to know their entire backstory, and you can learn it throughout gameplay and by checking out lores and different icons around the map. So the plot itself is fantastic for this time setting, and I know I've harped on this for a while, guys, but I'm just trying to establish the tone for you if you haven't played the game already. And it establishes Spider-Man in such a wonderful period in his life that I think is the core, the perfect spot in Spider-Man's career as a superhero. This is his time. This is where Spider-Man shines the best, where he's a well-seasoned superhero already, and he's fought his fair share of supervillains. It's a perfect time to really show the web crawler's real capabilities. Now, the story basically goes on that Peter has already, once again, future stuff. Mary Jane and him have already had a relationship and broke up. She also knows he is Spider-Man at this time. We also get the fact that he is working with the police department at this, at this junction. The RAF was established to house the supervillains. J. Jonah Jameson has moved on from the Daily Bugle and become a talk show host of his own podcast radio station, so to speak. Robbie has taken over the Daily Bugle. Peter is no longer a photographer for the Daily Bugle or even a higher up in the Daily Bugle. No, he's moved on from that and working as a scientist. Mayor Osborn is no longer the owner of a multi-billion-dollar Oscorp, but in fact is the current mayor of New York City. All these things just establish the world in ways that we have. If you know the character, as I said, I've been out of the loop as far as comic lore and the different universes and stuff for a very long time, better part of a decade. But these are things that I can see the characters I know, the Norman Osborns and the Mary Janes and the J. Jonah Jameses. I can see this progression in their characters from all interpretations of what I've seen of them. But I've never seen it done quite like this. Everyone has moved on in life. Everyone has gone forward. Nobody stays staple. And it doesn't remain untrue to their character. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It's very lifelike in that way. And I love it. The rest of the story basically goes that Kingpin is finally being taken down at the beginning of the game. And the overall plot of this game is the fact that there are two characters. There's Martin Lee, who is once again, Mr. Negative, who is a character that I'm not sure, I'm sure it might be brand new. It's not a supervillain I'm very familiar with. I know of the Negative Zone from a comic book way back when, but I'm not too sure about this Mr. Negative character. Are they new in the last 10 years? Probably. A character I'm not familiar with. And Otto Octavius, who is currently not Doc Ock as of yet. And we get, he's actually working with Peter Parker to try and establish, the limb system, of course. That's got to be a thing. Try to work a way around why he invents the arms. And the plot basically goes forth about, Norman Osborn creating, it's a multi-layered plot, and I'm going to try to summarize it very quickly here for you guys so we can move on to the rest of the review. But simply put, Martin Lee is got this power of turning everything negative and kind of mind control, sort of. It's pretty much brainwashing and imaginary powers, pretty much. Norman Osborn, basically, Harry Osborn is sick. No, and Norman Osborn, being mayor, is and Harry hasn't told anybody. Mary Jane and Peter are best friends in this realm, like in most iterations. And Norman Osborn is telling him he can't say anything. He's going to find a cure. The same disease that killed his wife is also killing his son Harry. So in this iteration of Spider-Man, he is trying to find a cure, and he's breaking all the rules to try to invent this thing. He uses anything he can think of, and this child version of this character, Martin Lee, once again has the powers of Mr. Negative. He tried to utilize that. It didn't work. Martin ended up killing his parents, and he wants revenge on Norman Osborn for it. Of course, Norman is still going ahead, 10, 15, 20 years later with trying to develop a cure, this G127 or whatever it's called. And it's been codenamed Devil's Breath. It's this biological weapon that is supposed to be a cure for Harry in its infancy stages, but unfortunately all they've managed to do so far is come up with basically a biological weapon, not an actual cure for the disease. Now, once again, this is all stuff we find out as we progress through the game and near the end of the game. But as I said, it's a very multi-layered story, and the story isn't super long, but it does include a lot of these things. We have, once again, Kingpin gets taken down, and then Martin Lee finds that it's his time to strike. And so he organizes a bunch of thugs called the Demons that he mind controls, some probably willingly, whatever, and they all try to do this thing to take down Norman Osborn is pretty much the goal here. Now, Otto Octavius and Norman Osborn used to be scientific, peers, and they used to work together in college and post-college. Oscorp was invented apparently by both of them, and that kind of makes sense. It's kind of cool, but in this iteration anyways. But, of course, Otto was kind of, Norman Osborn staying true to his character, as we know him, bit power-hungry, bit money-hungry, willing to kind of step on other people to get to where he wants to be. And it's implied here that he wants to go beyond being mayor of New York. Next step is senator sort of idea. If you go and look closely enough into the, rooms and stuff you can explore in the game. And in this way, of course, Otto continues, he's suffering from a disease that's slowly rotting away his body, but his mind stays intact, so he wants to hurry up with this development, hit roadblocks by Norman Osborn. In the end of the day, push comes to shove when all this comes to fruition, and of course, Peter's wrapped up in all of this. Spider-Man is wrapped up in all of this. He reconnects with Mary Jane, and they're trying to work together to figure this out. Miles Morales is introduced in this. And Though, once again, I don't really care for the certain aspects of the game in that way. The inclusion of Mary Jane and Miles, once again, this will be discussed in the gameplay section. The Miles and Mary Jane sections aren't my favorite. I think the game does fine without them. Nonetheless, they're included in the game as big namesake characters, if nothing else. The rest of the game goes on, and the overall plot finally starts to unravel, and we see characters pushed and pushed and pushed until breaking point, and finally Otto Octavius finally becomes Dr. Octopus, codenamed, of course, Doc Ock, and he establishes because he's a genius. He is a genius. That's established many a time, and he figures out a way to convince all the main staple villains, the Scorpion, Rhino, Vulture, Electro, all this stuff, to convince working with him to create the Sinister Six. So not only, and done in such a right way, like movies, like how they do this and such, they spend too much time on backstory and stuff. Electro's just a dude, he's got electric powers, get over it. Rhino's a dude in a suit, get over it. You know, Shocker, even Shocker's in the game as a, kind of working as a flunky more or less, not really part of the Sinister Six, though I am disappointed by the addition of Mr. Negative. I really would have liked Mr. Negative to be defeated, and then it's showcased that Shocker was the first of the Sinister Six, and Mr. Negative was just a pawn being used. That would have been kind of cooler to me, because I don't like him as the addition of this ragtag group of the great villains of Spider-Man sort of idea. Maybe because I'm just a nostalgia factor, if nothing else. But that being said, we get all these characters, and it's done in such a perfect way. The story flows perfectly for this. Otto Octavius figures out, using his genius mind turned to criminal, figures out a way to connect with all these villains so they all work for him. He has a battle plan. He knows how to get them out of prison. He knows how to attack Spider-Man's weak points. He knows how to get around the police. He knows how to do all these things to hurt Norman Osborn and take over everywhere with no drawbacks. He's just a genius mastermind, and it's just built up so perfectly in the game within the 3 acts. It works out amazingly. And then, of course, the final part, which, once again, spoilers, we find out a lot of really cool things. We find out the fact that Norman Osborn is, once again, he's a bit of an ass, but we find out that Otto Octavius knew the whole time that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and that really, that it's a really traumatic final boss fight between the two of them, how Peter really looked up to Otto, and Otto's just become so obsessed and so like he's gone too far down the dark side sort of idea. He can't pull himself back up to the man he was. He's too frustrated, he's too old, he's too decrepit, he's basically let himself go insane with revenge and desire and such, and he's just let this manifest, so he's not even himself anymore. This really disappoints, of course, Peter. It's very heartfelt, and it sucks. Throughout the way, you defeat all the villains in a tag team battle, so that's kind of cool. And that way, the game isn't prolonged too long. It flows and works really well. Then we get they take down Electro and Vulture and all of them, and they once again, and Shocker, they don't really get a whole big place setting in the game's story. They're just there as villain recruits. They already have an established history that we don't need to know. It's Rhino, it's Vulture, it's Electro. They are evil supervillains and they want to fight Spider-Man. It's very basic, and it works so well. And then we have after the Doc Ock fight and stuff, the big thing which hits home. It really did hit home really badly, and that's the fact that Aunt May has taken to this Devil's Breath that was released by Martin Lee and the Demons before Spider-Man could stop them. And though he fights the Sinister Six, and or as sometimes called the Insidious Six and such, fights this interpretation of them, gets the anti-serum, gets it to the people in time, he can either save Aunt May and condemn the rest of the people infected to die, or he's got to let Aunt May die so that they can use that sample, the one sample, of course, to save so many other people. And that ending is very heartfelt. That is hard because, we all know that Uncle Ben dies. That's sad enough, but to have this happen is just, and just so close after he lost his mentor figure. I mean, I know that he later on finds out that Harry's actually really sick, and his best friend is sick. He kind of gets the girl in the end, I guess. Mary Jane and him reconnect, but all these bad things happen. He loses a friend in Miles Morales' father, which is an interconnecting storyline, Miles being throughout the game. He reconnects with Mary Jane, but he loses his friend Harry. He loses his mentor, Dr. Octopus, Otto Octavius, and he loses his only other living family in Aunt May. And that is so... And Aunt May knew. She knew when she found out. We don't know, but she knew he was Spider-Man. And that's just... Oh, God, that is just... That was hard. That was a really hard emotional moment, just watching scene after scene of this stuff happening. Then we get the credits and we get a couple of extra scenes. We get the fact that Miles throughout the game, when Mary Jane broke in, of course the whole Oscorp thing used from the Sam Raimi film that they were developing, the radioactive spider sort of idea, probably for a cure for Harry, go down that line. And one of them crawled onto Mary Jane's clothes and eventually bit Miles. So now Miles and Peter have moved in together, and they both jump on the ceiling, and it's like, hey, two Spider-Man, that's pretty cool. So that's really neat. And Miles already has a great opinion and admiration for Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So this should be interesting when we get a sequel game. That'll be really cool. And then we get the final ending cutscene, which really establishes what's going to happen next. Now, I'm not sure if I'm happy about this. I'm hoping something different happens. But we see that in the room that Mary Jane found, the secret lab that housed all the stuff about G27 and all that stuff about Devil's Breath, we find Norman entering that place, because Norman Osborn, of course, survives. And he... goes into this secret room and opens the thing, and Harry is in the penthouse. Harry is living in a big, like, Banga tank from Star Wars sort of idea, a Baka tank or whatever it's called, and is just floating in there, just floating and being kept alive. And we see all this weird black, like, sludge all around him, and it took a little while to understand. But then when Norman's talking about finding a cure and he'll stop at nothing and stuff, he puts the hand on the glass and lowers his head, and then we see that same black substance, boom, and we know what it is. We all know, and it's the reason that we do not get a black Spider-Man costume. The most popular, one of, if not the most popular alternate suits for Spider-Man past the red and blue tights, is the black Spider-Man suit, and it's the reason it's not unlockable in the game. The creators already came out and said it. The reason is it means too much to the Spider-Verse to simply be an unlocked costume. It needs more sustenance. So we know that the symbiote is inside Harry's tank, likely the thing keeping him alive. Now, whether clearly Norman knows something about this. This is some alien life form that he was told about. His researchers did something about it. He's not a bad scientist on his own right, so he probably knows something. It's keeping Harry alive, but it's not going to cure him. So he's utilizing this alien life form to keep his son alive. Now, for sequel games, I don't know what that will mean. I'm not a huge fan of Harry Osborn becoming Venom, so I'm hoping that somehow they figure out a thing. The symbiote somehow gets out. It latches, of course, the classic story is it latches on Spider-Man first, and that is why Venom has all of Spider-Man's abilities, can block his spider sense, uses webbing, looks like Spider-Man, a dark version, is because it latches onto Spider-Man first, takes on its host, uses its abilities long enough that when it transfers, it becomes the anti-Spider-Man, a Venom, a poison to Spider-Man, the anti-Spider-Man, and that's what Venom encompasses. So I'm really hoping they do something with that. It was just a nice little secret ending nod to a lot of fans who understood what that meant. And considering the success of the game, I'm really looking forward to see Spider-Man 2, the video game. That'll be really great. So yeah, let's now that we got past all that, let's move on to gameplay, because the gameplay is just solid. It's wonderful. It falls in the same vein as the original Spider-Man, the movie 2 game for GameCube and the such. It is such, like, swinging is flawless. The big open map of New York works wonderfully. The what they, I guess, dub as fetch or radiant quests or whatever, all the thug quests and sable and demon quests you can find, all the bases, everything works out phenomenally. The gadgets are not something I use too much, and I do have a problem with the stealth mode, because when you do bases and when you do stealth, you should be able to clear entire bases and entire waves and areas solely by stealth. It's something that they established in the Arkham games, and you can do in a lot of games like Deus Ex, Assassin's Creed, sometimes even as far as games like, I guess, Shadow of Mordor, Prince of Persia, things like that. When you introduce a stealth mode, you should be able to stealth 90% of areas of the games. And in this game, in Spider-Man, you can do the first wave of enemies. You get these select bases of criminals throughout the area, and you have like 5 or 6 enemies dotted around the area, similar to the Arkham games. And you can take them out by, stealth takedowns and perch takedowns and all that fun jazz. But after you take out so many enemies, wave 2, usually about 5 or 6 waves of enemies come out, and after wave 1 is totally wiped out, they all know you're there. They're alerted to your presence, regardless of your suit abilities, regardless of how well you stayed hidden. If you're detected at all, it doesn't matter. That to me is a flaw. If I want to stealth my way as Spider-Man Noir, for example, I should be able to do so. So that was a bit, just a tiny little crux there. But once again, the open world concept was great. Collectibles, landmarks, the picture mode, the gameplay mechanics, the fight style with the spider sense and stuff. It worked really well. Took me a little while to get the hang of it, but once I got the little hang of this, using spider sense to my advantage and learning how to fill up the focus bar and when to utilize it properly, what to upgrade, that's a big thing. Use the upgrades, really read the descriptions and figure out, and the spider powers and such, and really figure out what suit matches your needs and what matches your gameplay style. Once you get the hang of that, it doesn't take very long, and then you'll be kicking ass. You'll be kicking 50, 60 thugs around like they're nothing. You'll be whipping them around with your webs. You do it if you want to use the gadgets, that's great. I didn't use much of the gadgets myself. A couple of trip mines here and there for trophies and basically for fun, but usually I stuck to just beat them up. I stuck to spider sense, stealth, and beat them up. It worked for me really well. And of course I did platinum the game. I platinumed the game. I got the new game plus, the ultimate platinum, all that stuff, so really good there. Throughout the most of the gameplay, as I said, the fight mechanics were good. The open world was good. Another big problem. This is the only, not a big problem, but similar in vein to the problem with the stealth thing. One of my only other problems I had was the Mary Jane, especially playing it a second time. The whole Mary Jane and Miles scenes were so unnecessary. They added so little to the game. We could have just seen these in 15-minute cutscenes, seen everything that happened. I don't need these interactive, horror, survival horror sections to my Spider-Man Adventure open world game. I mean, imagine if you were playing Grand Theft Auto and all of a sudden you had to jump to like Roman in Grand Theft Auto 4 and you had to play like a taxi mission where you had to drive perfectly or something for a little while, and you couldn't use your guns and you couldn't run and you couldn't steal cars. Like you had no control like you did usually when you're controlling Nico or whatever. And then you jump back and you do that like 3 times over the main story. They would be the worst parts of the Grand Theft Auto, right? So it's the same idea here. It's not that it was done poorly, it was just so unnecessary and so boring and daunting. I didn't like doing any of it. Like, you could have explained all the things found out in cutscenes and done it in a cutscene-esque style. Because the cutscenes were phenomenal, really well shot. Love the story. Once again, nobody skips cutscenes. I didn't even skip my second playthrough. I didn't skip anything. I actually spent more time watching cutscenes than getting through my ultimate playthrough. So that was really cool. So yeah, because the story was so good. So yeah, those parts, not so much. Some of the Taskmaster things were a little odd. Like some of them take a little bit getting the hang of, sort of idea. No mission overall was too difficult or felt out of place, really. There were a couple missions where it was just like, really, like we're doing this. They try to introduce a bunch of different sort of aspects to what you can do as Spider-Man with all this free control. Some of it I was just like, especially the second time, I was like, I gotta go through this section to get to the rest of the game, that kind of stuff. Boss fights were really well done. Nothing was too difficult, even on the ultimate difficulty. As you level up, by the time you play ultimate difficulty, you'll be level 50, you'll be fine. And I didn't find anything too difficult. I mean, some parts of the game are unforgiving, but not to the point that just trying and trying and trying, because I will admit, when I played the first half of my first game, I could only do 1 or 2 crimes before I just wasn't good enough and I would die. I couldn't build my focus bar fast enough. I didn't have enough skills and level and stuff like that, and I would die a lot. But the best part is that the game is so forgiving that when you die, it's like, yeah, you lost the tokens for that crime, but you can just roll around the city and try to find another crime, and it worked out really well. So, and checkpoints were very forgiving. Boss fights were very forgiving in all the stages. You didn't, if you were 1 hit away from beating a boss after 3 stages, you wouldn't fall back all the way to stage 1. You'd be at the beginning of stage 3, the final stage of that boss again, with full bars and all that stuff. So really forgiving gameplay, which just made the game feel so much more enjoyable being Spider-Man. The only other thing, I guess, was the suits, the suit costumes. Once again, I'm making a separate video about that. I spent 99% of my time as the Scarlet Spider. As a comic book fan, Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly, my favorite interpretation of Spider-Man, the Clone Saga, was the thing back in the 90s. It was such a big storyline, and I mean, you were following Kane, and who was the real Peter Parker, and who's Jackal, and what's this 4th Peter Parker doing, and who's the Scarlet Spider, and all this crazy stuff. It was a huge, huge storyline, and I'm so glad I jumped around 99% of the time as that. And in my second playthrough, I was Spider-Man 2099. Not that I own too many of the comics. I own 3 or 4. I own the first issue and a couple others. But yeah, those are 2 suits that I really, really enjoy. But I love all the different interpretations you can unlock. What I really would have liked, though, is now I don't know if this is in the game. Maybe if I had delved deep enough into maybe the backpacks lore or something. But each suit, I really would have liked a comic reference. Like to say, this suit, which first appeared in this issue in 1974, is a suit that he developed to fight Electro, like the Electro-proof number 2 suit. The black and red one that we unlock in the game, for example, is a newer edition of an old-style suit. So I would have liked to see, like, okay, when was this particular version of the suit introduced? Maybe that is somewhere in all the text. I didn't really see it. To be fair, I didn't really look for it. If it's there, let me know in the comment section below, but that would have been really cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it for gameplay. Once again, 10 out of 10 gameplay. Really enjoy it. Sad that there's not really much more. I don't feel like spending another $30, $40 on DLC right now until like maybe a huge package comes out with 4 or 5 DLCs, not just these other 3. The City That Sleeps doesn't interest me too much. The only thing that's holding me to maybe getting that is the Black Cat. Big fan of the Black Cat. So yeah, I did not play any of the DLC. You guys gonna have to let me know how that is. I assume it plays just as well. So story's great, gameplay's great, with just a couple of tweaks would made it perfect. All the gadgets, all the gameplay, all that stuff. So then we go into the soundtrack, which of course music and voice acting. The voice acting is just stellar. The voice acting is phenomenal, and I think that Aunt May looks and sounds the best out of almost anybody in the game. A perfect interpretation of Aunt May. A great, just 10 out of 10 there. And Peter Parker, done phenomenally. Spider-Man with all the quips and all the jokes and all the stuff, and the Spider Cop. Yeah, he can do this, and he's not loved by the police, but they need him. That is so Spider-Man. All the stuff and all the references to the theme songs, the old theme songs and stuff, like action is my reward, officer, don't worry about it. Things like that. Just wonderful voice acting. Once again, did not have a problem with any singular voice actor. But 2 just little things. Number 1, once again, Mary Jane is reduced to, now I know that a lot of this was video, like face capture and such, but once again, same with my problems with Kirsten Dunst and all this other things, is that Mary Jane Watson is supposed to be a gorgeous, drop-dead gorgeous redhead model of a person. And not that I minded her attitude or voice acting in this game. I thought the interpretation of the character was phenomenal. But and I know it's a video game character, but she just doesn't do it for me. Like, what's with the cute schoolgirl with the freckles look, like, going on all the time? This interpretation of Mary Jane has not been good for a very long time in any media form, in my opinion. I miss all my old comic books. I can pull out any number of comics out of multiple different boxes in the closet, and I can find you multiple where she is a model or an actress, always successful, none of this other stuff. She's always a successful model or actress, or doing these gigs, or flying to New York, going to LA and all these other places to do these photo shoots and stuff. She is, and she's supposed to look like every man's dream. And not that she can just be an airhead and one-dimensional. I, once again, loved her character. It's just that, once again, where this game had beautiful graphics and everybody looked like everyone, even Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn had that same feel that you always get from those two. Mary Jane, just once again, the look, the acting, the voice acting and the personality were really good for a veteran girlfriend of Spider-Man. But once again, the look just, it just wasn't there for me. It wasn't there. The only other thing is the whole Miles Morales' father being called Jeff Davis. Now, I didn't look up this beforehand, so maybe that's a thing. Maybe his father is not Jeff Morales, or maybe he's not even Jeff in the comics. I don't know. I'm just going off of what I know from the game. I know of Miles Morales, the Black Spider-Man from another universe, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that I had a bit of an issue with is that, as someone who followed comics before Miles Morales was introduced, when I saw a black police officer pull up that was going to be relevant in the game and last name Davis, I was thinking the Prowler. I was thinking we were going to see the Prowler, and I love the Prowler. The Prowler is such a the Prowler is just so cool. I love the Prowler. He's like what Daredevil should be, in my opinion, you know? He is a badass character, and I love the fact that he is referenced in Spider-Man, in the MCU and stuff, in Spider-Man Homecoming and the like. So we are going to get the Prowler in the MCU. That's amazing. Played by Donald Glover there. So that's even better, because great actor there too, a son of Danny Glover. But I was very disappointed, honestly, when it just turned out to be whatever the hype is, Miles Morales. And I'm like, really? So I don't know. You guys let me know. I'll probably look it up later if that is his father's name, and that tipped off a lot of people. But to me, I was thinking, Davis. Well, that'd be the Prowler, you know? Like, I was trying to connect the dots. I'm like, who is this character, you know? Jeff Davis? Oh, Prowler, Davis, right? Once again, the Prowler has been multiple people, but I was just trying to connect, and I thought, you know, as someone who, once again, has not followed Miles Morales' Spider-Man or any of that stuff for 10 years, I guess. So, anyways, all that aside, pros and cons, once again. Pros, play this damn game. It's perfect. In my opinion, it's definitely game of the year as far as any game I played of 2018. It's phenomenal. Gameplay, you feel like you're Spider-Man. It's not too hard. It's not too soft on you. It's got extra content for those who love it. Collectibles. It's got a great story introducing the Sinister Six, something that we, once again, just wonderful. The Sinister Six, man, and Kingpin's there, and Taskmaster and Shocker outside of the Sinister Six. Norman Osborn, Venom symbiote is there. Like, it's just Black Cat is there. They managed to jam-pack so much information into there, and it didn't feel oversaturated. It was just like Spider-Man 3 was the movie. It's like, boom, we're going to throw so many villains at you, see what sticks. You know, because oversaturation never works. This was not that. It wasn't. It was perfect perfectly done. Great storytelling, great gameplay, all that fun jazz. Great voice acting, sound, everything. The only cons, once again, is the inability to do modes more stealthy if you're under-leveled or just prefer a stealthy play style. I already talked about some of the other smaller cons and stuff once again. But really, overall, my only real gripe that I, once again, honestly have is Mr. Negative being included in the Sinister Six, while Shocker was a flunky. I understand that Mr. Negative's story would have been better to me if Doc Ock had been manipulating Martin Lee the whole time and he had gathered 5 supervillains from the raft, not including Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative gets defeated in Act 2, then Act 3 is all about the Sinister Six while Martin Lee is locked up. That, to me, would have been a nice change because, once again, for me, I want to see, Green Goblin or Shocker or Kingpin or the Chameleon, who is referenced in the game. The Chameleon, a main staple. Mysterio, these characters were main staples of the Sinister Six and the Insidious Six in all their interpretations. So I really would have preferred one of them over, especially since they get 2v2, like Electro, Vulture, the classic villains. Scorpion and Rhino, they get a battle. And then Mr. Negative, I know he's supposed to be like the main staple villain, him and Doc Ock, but he gets his own separate fight and backstory and all that stuff. And I'm just not that interested. I'm not invested in him because, to me, he's just a new character. First time I've heard of him. So anyways, that's my only real gripe about the game, and really it doesn't take away from it. It's just a preference thing for me. So yeah, final thoughts. It was fantastic. What a great game. Please, guys, if you're a Spider-Man fan, a comic book fan, just a gamer, you don't even really need I mean, if you don't like Spider-Man, you probably won't enjoy it too much, but it's a wonderful game even outside of just being Spider-Man. It's a well done sandbox open world style game with lots of content, lots of stuff to do. So anyways, I give it 10 out of 10. I platinumed it this week, and I just want to play more. I still want to play more, even though I mastered the game. I still want to do more. So that being said, everyone, this has been Griever with your Spider-Man Insomniac's Big Game Spider-Man review. And we'll see you back here next time, guys. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, it's always appreciated. And hopefully I'll be doing more gaming reviews like this and the Darksiders 3 review in the near future if I can carve out enough time to game. So that being said, everyone, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.